Hey guys, welcome to the Ben Tracy podcast, where I interview thought leaders, parents, and educators about navigating life in the digital age and what we can all do to keep kids safe online. This podcast is sponsored by Bark Technologies. Let's get into it. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Ben Tracy podcast. I'm here today with Brad and Kari Boettler, the parents of Evan Boettler. And so, Brad and Kari, where I'd love to start is just to hear a little bit about who Evan Boettler was.
Okay. I would say Evan was, he was a great kid all around. From the time he was born, little spunky thing, just a ball of energy. He loved all things. You know, he would get very excited about plays, musicals. He liked to go do those things, but yet he was also excited about flag football, baseball. You know, he was just an all-around great kid. He loved the outdoors from an very early age. He and Brad would go fishing, hunting. That was a big part of who he was. That was his core, you know, the outdoors. As a student, he was a great student. His teachers loved him every year. You know, we always heard how he liked to talk a lot, you know.
Got that from his mom.
He was a talker, but he, you know, school came pretty easy for him. I don't know. What do you want to add?
I would say, like, when he was in school, he wasn't a troublemaker. We didn't get calls from the principal's office or anything like that. There might have been one or two times that he kind of got in a little bit of honoriness trouble. But another piece that I think is important is that he was always kind to all of the kids. There were times that I can recall that teachers would put him sitting next to maybe the kid that had outbursts or the kid that was maybe different than the others, because he was always willing to work with them and talk with them and treat them just like all the other students, which I think sometimes is hard in school. So I think that was a big part of him. He always loved everybody. He always liked everybody. He got along with everybody. He was not one that liked seeing people treated poorly. So there are, you could talk about specific situations where he befriended people who maybe other people had outcast from the social group, or just ostracized, I guess, from the general population of students. So he was friendly to everybody, well respected in our community. I work in a lot of social organizations in town, and oftentimes I would take him along. I'm sure when he was young, he thought it was dragging him along to those, but at the same time, he'd be willing to jump in and help in all of those. He was typically with me everywhere I went. If we were working on a habitat house, remember when him and Skinner were both really young, that they would be there picking up nails while I was framing walls. And recently, he worked on a project with me a couple years ago, putting siding on a house. So he was just always there with me.
Always willing to help. If anybody asked, he would do whatever. Now, with some of the things Brad would ask him to do, would he groan and complain a little bit about it? Yes, but once he got there and he was in the active service, he was happy. He was happy to help out with those kinds of things. Back to kind of in school, he was very kind to others and, kind of a champion for those who maybe were treated less. But he was kind of quiet because, Brad was a junior high principal when our kids were in principal. So it's kind of tough being the principal's kid. So he was kind of a homebody. I mean, our family was, and Sakinen is as well. We spent a lot of time together. He wasn't one that was, always out hanging with his friends. He would talk to him at school, or, they would play video games and kind of chat, a little bit together. But he was a homebody and loved his family. Cousins. That was a really big part every year. Brad's sister has Cousins Christmas. They've been doing that for years. And they all go to her house and, play games, cook, craft, whatever. And that was a big, thing for them every year, was to plan for cousins' Christmas. His cousins were pretty special, important to him, all family.
The outdoors was really, like she had said, it was his absolute love. Fishing. If we had, like, we went on some vacations outside of going to the lake frequently, but if we were going somewhere where there was going to possibly be a puddle of water that he could fish in, he was taking his fishing pole, and as soon as we would get to that spot, he would say, "Dad, I'm going to go down and fish." And there were a lot of times when we were camping at Table Rock Lake, and he'd wake up before the sun came up, and he'd be shaking my arm and saying he's going to go down and fish. And typically we'd watch him fish from the bank, and next thing you know, he'd be dragging this big old fish running up the hill with this largemouth bass, saying, "Dad, look what I caught." I'm like, "What you catch him on?" And he'd drag out this thing out of my tackle box that I'd bought 15, 20 years, like the oldest lure in the box. And I'm like, "You can fish with it, but you're not going to catch anything." And I don't know how he did it. He had a special skill that he could catch a fish just about anywhere and everywhere that we went. And that was, an absolute love of his was to be on the water and fishing. Second to probably, or I don't know, that they're probably weighed off with like hunting and spending time in the woods. I couldn't, even begin to put a total on the number of hours that we spent side by side in a blind in the national forest, especially this time of year. And tree stands, once he got old enough to climb in a tree stand, there's just so many hours and memories of him just loving the adventure. He was able to harvest a huge deer a couple years ago that was just, and it's a crazy story, but he loved that. But at the same time, I think a lot of it was just spending time in nature.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do all weekend long.
I know, like, excuse me. I know, like, he loved it for himself, but he also, I remember him saying one time, that he wanted to go because he wanted Dad to get a chance to get one. He got his, but he wanted his dad to get a chance to get one. And whereas that was kind of the nice side of him, there were always times too where they would go fishing or hunting, and Evan would talk a little smack about how, I caught the biggest today. Dad might have caught the most, but I got the biggest. There was always kind of that banter.
Right?
Yeah.
That's just the
That,
part of
that
it.
banter. But, when he was little, when we would go camping, there's not a lot of, 10, 11, 12-year-old boys that are getting up before the sun and, self-initiated to go get their stuff and going down because, he loved it. It was what he loved.
Yeah, I think at least half the photos that I've seen of Evan are him with a holding.
We have so many. Yeah. It's just everything he lived for was, the outdoors.
His dream was really to be a professional fisherman. And even up till, months before he passed away, that he had talked about being a pro fisherman. And it's like, this probably never happened. I was like, you just got to put the time in and the effort in. And when he was young, we actually have a pretty funny video of him on the front of the boat, and he caught a fish, and he holds it up. And
he had me record. He's like, "Hey guys, out here today, I'm throwing a whopper plopper or something," and he's like showing it, and I'm videoing him, as he was going to have his own YouTube channel with his fishing, excursions or whatever. So,
caught one, and then he was like, "I'm so proud of myself."
we do. Yeah, we do have that video as well. So
But just a great kid. I couldn't even begin to say, probably paint the perfect picture of him, because he just loved people. He loved his family, and just had a heart that, for anything and everything, really.
in high school, he was a sophomore. He'd be a junior now. He had just gotten his driver's license. It would have been 2 years ago in October. So anyway, he was starting to drive, starting to kind of out of his shell a little bit. He he played soccer on the high school soccer team, and that was another, he was starting to kind of transition into that was a big deal for him, and kind of hanging out, making friends with people on the team. And, he was one on the team always kind of trying to rally everybody up and, team support. And when they would kind of be down on, the goalie or something for missing. I remember one game where he even said something to the goalie, but then he went and apologized to him afterwards because he felt bad and was like, I shouldn't have done that. So soccer was a big thing for him. We spent a lot of time with that, and he was actually nominated this last summer. He would have been going to Boise State, for leadership. He was trying to decide actually whether, what he was going to do, whether he was going to go to that or what was the other option.
Go to Canada and fish.
Yeah.
Because we had set up to go back to Canada. So he was weighing back and forth on that, and he's like, I got voted at the school for this, Boise State. So he's like, I probably better do that. And I was like, I'm good with that. We'll hit Canada another time. It'll be all right.
He was starting to kind of come into like, just maturing from being a child to, making that transition into, not an adult obviously yet, but just kind of being able to see who he was going to be as an adult, where he aligned himself in his leadership,
But also gave 100%. All that, like if he was vested in soccer or vested in fishing, whatever it was, he would give 100%. He wasn't one to, on the soccer field, he didn't want people to play down or not give their all, and he typically was out on the field going 100%. And
even in basketball, he was not the greatest basketball player, but he tried when he was younger. And our coach, the high school coach, was like, if I had players that gave as much as Evan did, he'd play JV. And then I think he finally decided, basketball isn't where it's at. I'm going to go to soccer. But in practices, he gave 100%. He was, always willing to do what he needed to do to put in the work.
Yeah. What else? There was just a thought that I had, and it skipped me for a second. Cross country was another one that if you looked at pictures of him when he was 7th and 8th grade, he doesn't look like a cross country runner. But some kids came. He was actually at school with me one morning while we were doing breakfast for teachers, and he was helping me. But some of the kids came to the door and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, Evan, why don't you come run with us?" And he looked at me. He was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "You can go if you want. I don't have a problem with that." And next thing you know, he's out the door and running. And he won an award that year too for just being the one on the team that gave 100% and was always cheering for other people as well. So I think that was a huge characteristic of him, is that he just loved everybody and
he was well-rounded.
He wanted to see everybody succeed, whether it be on the cross country, the soccer, fishing. One of his friends was able to go bow hunting with us, or he took him bow hunting to on property really close to us. And Evan had this big mature deer that he had been kind of watching. And his friend was like, "Hey, if I see this one, can I shoot that one? Can I shoot this one?" And Evan's like told him he could have the smaller one.
He wanted the bigger one.
But his buddy, Evan wanted the big one, but it came out in front of his friend, and his friend just shot this, really, really nice deer for our area. And I remember asking him, like, were you upset that he shot the deer you had been looking at? He's like, no. He's like, he had never shot one before, and that was a really good first year for him. And there's not many, even adults really, that would be willing to let somebody step in on your hunting area or your fishing area.
Them getting yours.
He was truly excited for his friend who hadn't had the opportunity to harvest a big deer yet. So yeah, he's just mature, I guess, in his own way, and I just can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah. Sounds like kind of your perfect sort of all-American kid, right?
I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. There were times like he and I were a lot alike, had to have the last word in a conversation sometimes. And there were times that you were just, a teenage boy, like, ooh. But, anytime you get in an argument, he would always apologize for it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have acted like that. I shouldn't have said that. He just had a really good heart.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, could you share what happened in early 2024 and what that experience was like for your family, and kind of just walk everyone who's listening. It'll be, a lot of other parents who have children like Evan. Um, you know, if you wouldn't mind sharing that story, I think that'd be very valuable.
I think we'd have to kind of go back a little bit before, like the week before, to kind of, for me, just to build the picture, because, we were on Christmas break. We had spent a lot of time together over Christmas break. He had kind of been talking to a girl, and we went and watched her play at the pink and white tournament at Missouri State, and went and watched the boys play in the blue and gold. And so we had spent a lot of time driving back and forth to Springfield watching those games. New Year's Eve, we got together. He wasn't out hanging out with friends. He was hanging out with us just because, it's just what we did. And we went to some friend's house and played board games. He played with us. Went back home and played more games as a family, just the four of us hanging out. And so, it was a lot of good family time together before we had to go back to school. And then, January 3rd, it was a Wednesday, first day back to school. Nobody wants to go back after Christmas break. So the kids usually would come home. Evan had his driver's license, so he'd drive them home. They'd come home and let the dogs out and, kind of have an after-school snack, hang out. I have a dog and was trying to be a better dog owner and take her for walks, after school. And so I called Brad on my way home and I said, hey, I'll beat you home today. And I said, I'm going to go walk Birdie. Well, he was on his way home too. So we get home and Evan was laying in our bed, which he always, both of our kids say our bed is the most comfortable. So he was just on his phone laying in our bed, and Brad asked him if he wanted to go for a walk with us. And he's like, no, which, not surprising for a 16-year-old boy not really wanting to go walk with his parents after he had to go back to school. So we didn't really think anything of it. He didn't act anything out of norm. And we took off to go walk the dog. It was about 5:30. And we live in a small neighborhood. We decided to walk one lap around, which was about a quarter of a mile. So we did one lap and it was starting to get dark. And Brad said, I think I'm going to go back in. It was also cold. And I said, I think I'm going to go for another lap. And as we were standing there, we got a text message at the same time we heard. And we took off running, because I was reading it as I heard the sound outside. And we went running through the house and went out the back door. And
that's where we found him.
Found him in our backyard. And, you're in complete shock. I recall things from that moment, but I also know there were things that I don't remember from that moment. And it didn't make any sense to us at all. We tried to come, obviously that day was just surviving. The rest of that night was just surviving, getting through, and not even really trying to make sense. Just, I don't even remember the rest of the night a whole lot. But, I asked Sakinnan, like, what happened at school? Do you know anything that happened? Like, what can you tell me? And she's, nothing. We could not, he was happy. He thinking about, well, he meal prepped. He had all these plans, he had, before he went back to school, he meal prepped lunches. We're like this, I just knew that it wasn't, he didn't take his own life because he was sad or upset. It didn't make sense to me. So, our family, our community, everybody was kind of in the same place. It just didn't make sense. It didn't fit, because basically I feel like we had a fairy tale, like we had two great kids. We were successful and we had a great community, lived in a great place. And it just, I couldn't come to terms with it. So, I had his phone, and of course the police, came, they searched the phone, and our police chief, Wes, he was like, there's nothing on this phone. It's clean. Like, I haven't seen a 15-year-old boy, I can't imagine a 15-year-old boy having, or 16, having, the phone clean like this. Like, there's nothing. Went through all of the, they downloaded all of his social media information, didn't find anything.
He said it was all like, fishing and hunting videos that he had been watching. And
There were, he said there were some, jokes between him and his friends, just giving each other crap, but nothing that was out of the ordinary, no inappropriate stuff. So we, proceeded to go on trying to figure out what this meant. But I was obsessed with searching his phone, every day, multiple times a day, logging into his social media and checking messages, checking Snapchat, checking all the things. And nothing turned up for a while. And then on
almost a month, like
February 6th, I think.
You had no idea like what had transpired or taken place on the phone.
So you were still checking it regularly after he passed, just to see. Yep.
Yeah. There were some. It was the only weird thing was on Facebook. There were some like people that had been added as friends that were not, like didn't fit with his character. I mean, you're like, what the heck? Why? And so your mind is starting to like, had he gotten into something that we had no idea? Whatever. And then on February 6th, I just looked in the phone. It was like 11:30 at night, and I just happened to check it, and the message, all the messages started showing up, the extortion. And I, immediately called Brad and I was like, you've got to come in here and check this out. And so I logged in on my computer so we could see the message thread, a little bigger. And we immediately called our police chief, Wes, who came over, benefit of being in a small town is knowing, your police chief.
Yep.
So, we got the details that he, in fact, had been extorted through Instagram. Looked like once they, the FBI took his phone, and it looks like, this person, young girl, contacted him on Snapchat, struck up a conversation and groomed him quickly and convinced him to send a photo. And the moment that was sent, it switched over to Instagram. And they had screenshotted all of his followers with the picture. And, I'm going to send this to...
Going to ruin your life. Like,
Yes.
that was one of the first messages. I'm going to ruin your life.
That's what they said verbatim.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Are you ready to comply? Or I will ruin your life. And started asking him for money. And Evan's like, I don't have a job. I just do odd jobs. I don't have any money.
How much money were they asking for? Do you remember?
was it 500?
I think it was.
It wasn't. It wasn't like a
large sum.
$10,000 or anything like that. But Evan liked to spend his money when he did have it, and he had $1.37 in his account at that time. And he said that in the messages. He's like, I got like $1.37. I have no money. So.
Right.
They said, ask your parents. And he was like, they're not going to give me that money. And they said, go to the store and get an Apple, gift card. And Evan was like, I don't have any money. And they said, he said, I do side jobs and get money sometimes. And they said, well, when will you get the money? When can you have it? And it was just, basically 2 hours of just
message after message
Correct.
after message after message, like
Yep.
just basically like, poking them in the chest on, hey, you're going to give me money or this is going to happen. And it just, when I saw the messages, I was, nearly got sick. And
they asked for our address too.
Yeah.
And Evan's response was, why are you going to kill me? And I don't know, you could just see in that how scared he was.
Sure.
And this person just played off of, because they look at his social media. We didn't let our kids have social media till they turned 16. Excuse me. We held off as long as we could. And we were very honest with our kids about, very open, explaining all the things that could go wrong. We had no idea this was one of them.
Sure. Well, sorry to interject.
Oh, you're good.
So he turns 16 October 17th.
Yeah.
and this happens January 3rd.
Yeah.
And so you did the right, like what people like me would recommend, right? Which is keeping your kids off of the, not having a social media profile until you're 16 is actually extremely rare. I mean, I go in these schools and, speak to 3rd to 5th graders, and well over half of them are on there, 6th to 8th, 80, 90% of them. So to be turning, to have turned 16 and not had access is actually extremely rare. And so you as parents knew that this stuff could potentially be problematic.
Yes, and I think, sometimes I look back and I'm like, did we, think maybe it was because he only had Instagram for 2 months. He had Snapchat for 1 month. It was not very long. So he was naive, to the goings on. But our kids, we weren't always favored by our kids because we made that choice to postpone it. But I do remember Evan saying one time, I am kind of glad that you didn't let us get it. I'm so sorry. Because I see people doing these things, that they shouldn't. Anyway, so they were kind of glad. And Sakinen has told us that as well. She still does not have.
She actually had Instagram, but then it was shortly after we found out what had happened that she deleted her Instagram, and she just doesn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
As, there's some situations that the people will reach out to family members even after things have happened and try to extend their families based on just the connection. And we've not had that at this point, but for me, when that all happened, I can't even really put in words the devastation that it brought to me as a father, or us as a family, or the community, because he was a fantastic kid, and he was my best friend, and I know you're not supposed to necessarily be best friends with your kids, but he truly was.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry for your loss. And it's, I mean, all of these stories are tragic, but you were the parents who were doing the right things. The things that folks like me say to do, to wait, to monitor, to check the phones, and that's. I think, all of these stories, all the families I talk to, it's the common thread is like good kid, good family, good schools, parents who are involved. About all the things that kids are exposed to as educators, right? So this thing is so different, though. Had you heard of sextortion or online extortion or any of this stuff before this happened?
So we've become very well educated on it now, or as educated as we can now, and that honestly was a big push on why we chose to kind of go public and tell Evan's story. We found out, like we said before, January 3rd is when it happened. We didn't find out until I think it was February 5th was when the message
I think
repopulated on his phone. So early in February, and we didn't go public until the 5th of March. Is when we finally decided. We decided before that, but we wanted to be sure that we had a good plan in place to go public with it, because we know, sometimes when you share just parts and pieces of information, that'll get turned and twisted, and so we wanted to be really intentional with when we came out with it, that the message that we shared gave all the specifics, and it wasn't allowing people to make up a story or speculate behind it. So a big push for us to go public was to make sure parents were aware and kids were aware of this happening, because we are in education and we were aware of a lot of those negative things, but this is one of those things that we did not know. People from other countries were basically coming into your home,
targeting, because I think that's what we've read about, that they look through and they find kids who have strong family ties, who are successful, who are active in their community. They look for that, and that's like the what they go for. And then they will just random friend request people at that one school, find out where you're at, and they just target several, hoping to get somebody that bites that, takes that bait.
Now, were other kids in Aurora targeted by the same person?
That is something we don't
We don't know. I do, in looking at the picture, it's hard to see in the screenshot. I'm not sure. There was one other person that it looked like they had in common with that same account.
Yep.
But nobody came forward to say that they had been contacted.
The only thing that happened, once we did come out with it, I had two parents that contacted, messaged me. One called me and said, this happened to my son 2 years ago. And, we were so embarrassed, he was so embarrassed by it, and we didn't come forward. We didn't say anything. And that's what they play on is, your
emotion, and
your guilt.
Yeah, people don't want to necessarily say that they did something like this on social media, and as a parent, you don't necessarily want to go broadcast to everybody that your kid did it.
Right.
But at the same point, that's the only way people become aware.
Totally. And God bless you guys for sharing the story, because I've been around. I've been doing this for a while, and there are thousands and thousands of stories that aren't being shared. And, I've encouraged so many parents that, most of them said, no, we don't want to share that. And, I've pushed for a long time, and, please share this, please share this, please share this. It could help other families. And it's so unfortunate that, I've been saying that for 5 years now, and that so many of them aren't. So God bless you for sharing it and trying to.
No, I think Everett would want that as well, even though he gave the ultimate keep it from being broadcast, I guess. But if he could save other people, he would have chosen to save other people as well.
And I think, part of our coming forward is just spreading the word that, every kid needs to have a trusted adult or a trusted 3 adults. Somebody that, because it's not a question of when this is going to happen. It's not if, sorry. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when this does happen, because it's super common to be targeted and contacted by bad actors online, and you should have people you can go to. And I don't say that saying that Evan didn't have, because we were very open. He talked to, us about girls, about school. We were very open. But I think he was so upset with himself that he made that one mistake, in a split instant. He made a mistake, and he was disappointed himself. He was afraid to disappoint us. And I think, he was a little insecure too. So thinking that was going to go to everybody at school was a huge thing, and just somebody saying they're going to ruin your life over and over for 2 hours. The whole event only took about 2 hours from start to,
From when he first sent the picture?
From the first contact with that person, contacting him on Snapchat, I think, till
well, we don't know the specifics on the first contact on Snapchat, but when the message thread started on Instagram.
2 hours.
Oh, no, it was pretty quick. All while we were, right close.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I tell parents it's so important to have these conversations frequently. Once you do know about this stuff, right, it can't just be a one-time thing, right? Because it can happen so quickly, and it's in the past, right, use drugs as an example, right? A kid starts smoking and then drinking and then starts smoking pot and goes to harder drugs, and you kind of see it play out over a longer timeline, and heaven forbid something horrible happens, but it's not like you're shocked a lot of times, right? And with social media, though, the time between the first contact and something awful happening, whether it be a sextortion and suicide or fentanyl, I mean, that timeline is just so fast. And I think that's really important that people who are watching this and other parents understand that this isn't like I've had several conversations like this. The start until something awful happens is, hours. I mean, at most 2 to 3 days, but usually, 1 to 5 hours is kind of the timeline of a lot of this stuff.
And I think, looking back at it, kids need to know, I think he got complacent in seeing people add friends, like, you know.
So we were pretty adamant about, make sure you only add people that you know, and make sure it's the right account. 'Cause, well, we had conversations like that, but
I think you just see your friends
when
adding other
everybody's doing it,
people.
and everybody, the social media things about likes, how your score, your snap, and I'm not a guru with all that, but like you mentioned earlier with the snap score and everybody wanting to get their scores up and the number of friends and the number of likes, the social media really pushes on that, and that's what the kids
Well, and it's the
see.
comparison, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually quantifiable, right? You actually can, at least in their minds, you actually can quantify who the most popular person is in school, and that's the person who has the highest snap score. That's the person with the most followers, the most likes, the most comments on their photos, or on their the highest snap score on Snapchat. And in their minds, you actually can quantify those things in a way that when parents were in school, it's like, well, you can make an argument about who the prettiest person is in school,
Yeah.
or who the most popular person is in school. And not that it's always accurate with the social media side of it, but that's how these kids view
Their
it.
brains aren't even, I mean, they're still they're still working with a child's brain,
Right.
like.
And that number you can get, they go back and look at all the time.
Sure.
So if they see it as a negative, they can go back and see that negative piece all the time. Like, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm not ever going to reach the highest score or whatnot. So that's always like a negative perception for them as well, where years ago when you didn't have this and you were having those conversations about who was the prettiest or who was the coolest, you'd have that conversation, but then you'd be on to something different, and you're not going to be able to go back and hear the exact same conversation or see the exact same thing that you talked about yesterday or last hour or a week ago.
Yeah. Jumping back to the messages on Instagram. So you would check them, but then that account message again, and it put it at kind of at the top of the other messages he had, and then you're able to read everything prior to that? Or?
It's still kind of a mystery. And I think it's because he had reported the conversation in the middle of the extortion.
Okay.
And so I think once.
Reported meaning to Instagram? Okay.
Yeah, he had reported the.
I think.
Yes. Because when I downloaded his information, it showed, like reported. I can't remember exactly what it looks like, but it showed that the conversation had been reported. And so then it was just gone, like I did not see it until February.
And for the first month, it wasn't there because she would go through all of his social media stuff and looking for new comments, new whatever, looking at all the old stuff to see if there was something that she had missed. And she had cummed over it. I cummed over it, which I'm not near as smart with that
And
stuff.
the police had looked at it as well, like their people had looked, and it was nowhere there. And so I don't know if we have not got an answer why it came back in February. I don't know if that person started their account again. We don't know.
So he got them, at least your understanding of it is, this conversation happened. He realized what this was, which is a online predator criminal account, right? That wasn't who they're saying they were. And then so he reports that to Instagram as being fake and malicious and a predator, and Instagram likely removes the account, right? Is that kind of
probably? I mean, but not before. Like it kept going.
The conversation was after the reported time.
Yes.
And then at some point, the whole conversation had disappeared. And then we have no idea how it came back.
It did not disappear while he was in mid-conversation.
Yeah. Oh,
like they were still.
He reported it. The messaging went on.
Yes.
Yes.
It was, he took his own life. You get the phone. You look through it. The police look through it. You continue to look through it for over a month. And then just 33, 34 days after this happens, you again look at the phone, and that message has reappeared with a new message along with all the prior conversations.
Or what? Any new messages. It was just that message thread.
Yeah, just the thread that included.
Well, unless it was like at the bottom, it just said like hello or did you find it yet? Because they were wanting his login for Instagram. They had asked for his bank account, his address. They had asked for his Facebook login, which he did give him his Facebook login. And then they asked for, and that's how he was able to screenshot the
IP address.
IP address, because they did log into his Facebook. And so when he got the notification they logged into his Facebook account, it came up with an IP address in Nigeria. And he screenshotted it, and he's like, I have your information. And they were like, great, what are you gonna do with it? Like, and so the conversation kept going, but then what transpired, and then I don't think there was any new messages. It was just like when I checked it one day, I saw the message thread and I was like, what the heck? Where did this? And the police.
So it's almost like Instagram flagged it. They reviewed it. They said, oh, well, it's fine. And they just kind of reinstated it. I mean, that would be my speculation as to what happened.
Something like that.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, what was the last message that they sent to Evan before he did what he did?
The last message that was on there was, did you find it yet? And that was looking for his login to Instagram. They had also sent him a code for Telegram, but I haven't been able to find out yet, if the conversation, nobody has suggested to us that it went that way. So I don't, the message before, did you find it yet, was, still just asking him for bank accounts, send me this, send me your address, send me this. And so that was kind of, if you don't send it, I'll release the pictures. I think you want me to send the pictures, you have to do it or we're going to send them. So it was basically just a back and forth of, I don't have it, give me this, I'll send the pictures.
It's interesting. It makes me wonder how many parents still don't truly know what happened to their child who's no longer with us, because it sounds like in a lot of ways almost pure luck that you were able to get this conversation, right? For whatever reason it was there. When it was there, you looked on that day. And every family that I've interviewed, whether it's a sextortion or fentanyl, it's been like they've lucked into the messages being there. Like one, the kid's girlfriend had to log into his phone, and that's the only way they sent a message after the young man had passed away. That account sent another message, and that's the only way they were able to identify who the person was. So it makes you wonder when it's like, and this is anecdotal obviously, but the conversations that I'm having where it's the parents probably shouldn't have found that, right? Or it had disappeared and then the account reemerged. And so then it makes you wonder, well, how much more of this is going on than even what we're aware of?
I would say it's just an astronomical number. There's been a couple suicides around Southwest Missouri, and one of the first things I'm asking is like, hey, did they get their phone? Did they get their phone? And there are some smaller agencies that they don't take the phones and they don't know what to necessarily do with them to really discover. And like our police chief did, he took it and he looked at it and he reviewed it, and he again said it was clear, there's nothing. And then once they were able to start a case and actually have the phone, all the data pulled off the phone, he brought us in one day and he said, I'll show you anything you want, on the phone. He went through everything that we asked, and he said, I have come through this multiple times. And he said there was one inappropriate photo, or one photo and it's the same photo that was taken through Snapchat, and then shared in the message thread, and it was just one photo.
I think that's what parents really need to hear, right? Like it just takes one time, one mistake to turn into something awful like this.
Yeah. And it can happen to anybody, and you truly want to know. And that goes back to like one of our big pushes when we talk is that you need to, your kids need to know at least three people that they can go to, and regardless of what's going on in their life, the absolute worst thing that they could ever imagine, 3 people that they could go to and tell them, and know that, as a parent or as an aunt or uncle or grandparent or a teacher or principal, counselor, whatever it is, they might be a little upset with you, but it doesn't change the fact that they love you and that they will always love you regardless of what it is. And, these situations are really temporary for a lot of the kids at the time. Not in the long term, they could be temporary. They reported them and moved.
You're making a permanent decision about a temporary problem.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to make sure kids understand that these things can be taken care of. There's software now that you can submit the picture, and it will go out and destroy all the
Take it down.
take it down. And we had no idea that was out there. That's something.
And when I shared that on our Instagram page, the resource of Nick Mick and taking it down, that was one of our biggest followed or liked posts.
Yeah,
because I think
people don't know about
it.
Nobody knows about that.
Yeah.
And it's partly poor marketing, but it's also, if you post about sextortion on social media, nobody's going to see it, but yet they can sextort thousands and thousands of kids, and the account will go away. If you report it, it'll go away for a little while or whatever. But a lot of times they don't review the stuff at all. Like Snapchat, I saw just a few weeks ago came out that there were 13,000 reports of sextortion that were not investigated at all, to the app Snapchat. And that's where it's so frustrating. It's we're out here traveling across the country, running across the country, posting online, trying to inform. But if you use these certain words, sextortion, suicide, predator, those types of things, the reach of that is so extremely limited. Whereas if it's they post a picture of me running down the side of the road with my shirt off, everybody's going to see that. And it's well, that's not the point, but we have to do some of that, to get the attention for, for the things that truly matter. So jumping back to, you said you reviewed the phone. Did you have a hunch that what happened involved that phone, or was just why did you continue looking?
I just did not feel as a mom, just intuition that was he had so much going for him.
Yeah.
He had so much going on, and there was never any talk negative. I mean, were there things that he was a little self-conscious about? Yeah, he was a 16-year-old boy. But I did not feel it in my heart that my kid was unhappy enough to take his own life. And so obviously the only next thing was the phone, that's what it had to. And it was beside him, which he had sent us the message right before. It wasn't necessarily that I thought it was on the phone because it was beside him. It was just, I don't know. I just knew it had to be something on his phone, because what else would have caused my kid to do this?
And I don't mean to pry, but so there was nothing in the message that he sent to you that alluded to the fact that it involved the phone?
No, his message to us just said that he had been feeling this way for a while and he just couldn't take it, but he tried to elude us.
Little things.
Yeah, little things added up, and it just didn't sit right. I just was what little thing? We're open, we're around every day. What? And not saying that there couldn't have been. I mean, we'll never know, but in my heart, I knew it had to be something that was done outside of our life. So I dug through it every day. I don't know where that came from. I don't know why what I thought I was going to find.
Yeah.
It was an obsession for me.
At that point, we were just searching for anything, everything. We're searching everything for just anything, because we really had nothing for a month. And to me, that was a lot of guilt on myself. Every day I'd try to figure out what I did wrong, or what hand I played in the whole scenario. And it was absolutely gut-wrenching guilt for the first month. And there's still always going to be guilt.
Was there any amount of relief to at least know this is what was the feeling when you found out? We can cut this, or you don't have, don't feel obligated to answer.
For me, when I was laying in bed the night that the message, that night there were several things that were just kind of unique, I guess, or different. And then I had gone to bed, and she was up in the living room, and I was about to fall asleep, and she hollered at me "Hey, come here now." And I was like, what do you want? Just, come here to the bedroom and tell me what you got. And she's like, no, now come here. I went in there and I started to read the messages, and it was sickening to me at that point, just absolute sickening.
I think at the initial, I didn't feel any relief at all. Initially, it was just complete terror for me reading them. This is what our kid just went through. holy cow, you know, like not just went through, but this is what he went through, you know, like, and I think we both felt sick. Like
Yeah.
we both, it was so stressful reading through those things. And then, you know, after we kind of came to things, I don't know that you would necessarily say that it was relief, but it gave us an answer.
Yeah.
A precipitating factor that we feel really is what led to the whole situation, you know, him taking his own life, because that's the piece that, you know, we spent a month and a half trying
every day trying to figure
that out. And to be honest with you, that month is like a blur for me. I don't really remember a whole lot of it. I mean,
I think it was just trying to, like I said, survive, you know, like basically sleeping all day, or trying, you know, like.
And I know, like in the days after, we combed his room for everything from his book bag. You know, we went through everything in his book bag, looked at all the papers that he had written in his.
They looked through his Chromebook, his school Chromebook.
Immediately contacted our tech guy to you know, do a search and a download on it. And you know, in his book bag from that day at school, he had goals, what he wanted to do for first semester, what he wanted to get all A's, he wanted to catch a 4-pound bass, he wanted to lose 20 pounds, you know, those.
He wanted to be nicer to his sister. He wanted to, you know.
Those were all goals that he had written on January 3rd in the, you know, the 7-8 hours at school, you know. And it wasn't just in one class. It was, you know, a lot of your classes when you come back for second semester, what are you going to do? You know, what do you want to do this semester? So a lot of teachers use that as a prompt, and there were multiple, you know, pages in there where he had just, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. I meal prepped. So, you know, then, you know, January 3rd that night, and your whole world is turned upside down. I mean, just absolutely upside down. And then you live that for a whole month, and then you get a message. And then, you know, we went to Wes immediately that next day, and he's like, you know, I can start, you know, a case. And he said, we can get the phone and we can write subpoenas and get more information. He said, but that's up to you. He said, I'm not going to force you guys. And at that time, we were a little hesitant because, you know, he gave the ultimate sacrifice to keep this all under a rug a little, you know, to not.
To hide it.
To be public with it. And so we weighed back and forth on that. And we went ahead and said, you know, let's go ahead and start the investigation. But as far as, and Wes shared with us, you know, what can be shared publicly and what can't be shared and what can be discovered. And then, you know, we spent a couple weeks going back and forth on do we want to do a public release? Do we not? And then, you know, it was in March that we finally said, hey, here's the deal.
We sat our family down first. We had, family and like really close friends. We had them come over and we just said, hey, we're going to come out with this, you know, press release. And we want you guys to know because we're not sure what's going to come of it, you know. And we felt like our community needed, because I think it does answer, you know, instead of everybody, because people, I know his friends were struggling. I mean, they still are struggling, but, you know, just what did I miss? Kids at school, I had class with him. He was just a normal self. Like, what did I miss? And so I think, you know, we felt like everybody deserved to have that, to kind of a little, not closure, but a little bit of an answer as to what caused that.
And to go back that we had decided, you know, that if he could help other kids, that.
Well, there's no doubt he is, and you are. And I mean, you're saving. What you guys are doing is and probably already has saved other lives, and that, you know, I just think it's so commendable and it's so necessary, because there are so many of these stories. And again, I've been pushing parents to do what you're doing, and I can't imagine how difficult it is and the courage that it takes to share it, and not only share but do so quickly. I mean, you know, we're talking, I mean, sitting here today, we're 10 months after this has happened, and to have done it in March, to start sharing this. I mean, that just, you know, while you're still very much grieving yourselves, I mean, I think that just really speaks volumes as to, you know, to your passion and your heart for, your son, but also your own community and just youth in general more widely. And, I think probably, obviously making some speculations, but as educators, you felt that, our job is to educate kids, is to keep them safe first and foremost. Right. And so, I just wonder, if you weren't both in the field of education, would you have made the decision that you made to
I don't know.
share?
It's very hard for me to speculate on.
I still feel like we would have, just because I still feel that, our family and friends deserved the right to know what had kind of happened. And just, even from our standpoint, not as educators, just as human beings, to try and save another person from going, or a family from going through what we've had to go through.
Especially when a lot of people don't know about this stuff too, right? I mean, so to other parents who are listening to this conversation, I mean, you're going to have parents all over the country listening to, this interview. What would you say to them as far as, they have children, they're thinking about getting them a phone for the first time, as parents who waited and who took that right step to wait as long as they could, like, what would your message be to other parents?
I think, like trying to keep educated. I think we become so complacent because as adults, we're using social media as well. And we think, like, oh, it's just, it's harmless. It's just a great way to, waste time going through. So, don't get stuck and complacent. You need to be educated on what the dangers are that are out there for your kids. And
Those change all the time, so you
yes,
need to be going to reliable places for that, like the FBI websites, to make sure that you stay current and stuff that's legit, not just stuff you see flash on
and
your
continue
screen.
talking to your kids about it, because your kids know what's going on. They're on the social media apps. Like, make sure you have that relationship and those important talks that your kids need to be telling you what is out there, because maybe they'll tell you and you can let other parents know, whereas another child isn't going to tell their parents, because like the choking challenge, there's new challenges that come out all the time, all the time there's new things coming out. And so just trying to stay as on top of things as you can, and to make sure that your kids know, no matter what they do, you are there to support them, and there is a way to get through what they're going through.
You always love them, like, and just kids in general, that there's somebody there for them. To parents, what I would say is, follow our website too. We've got an evansvoice.org website. We've got some resources on there to give some direction or help. And I would make myself available if they messaged us on the website and needed a little bit of direction. I'm not going to say I know everything, but I will do absolutely anything for any adult or kid that would come to me and say, hey, we've got this issue and we're just not sure how to go about it. I would dig and try to find as much advice and guidance for them to get them going in the right direction. As a big piece there. As far as the phone and social media, I would say stick to your guns on, really on making sure that if you don't think they should have it, don't give in.
Just because other parents are giving in.
And that's tough, because our kids, and we often had the discussion, like, are we making our kids miss out on stuff? And I don't believe we did. And like she said earlier, our kids have both said, like, hey, it's.
I'm glad you made us wait.
At one point, we wanted it really bad, but we're still glad that you made us wait, because we're not in the middle of the nonsense. And then get your kids engaged in stuff that makes them be active.
You have to fill that time with something else.
Yeah.
Take them fishing. Because when you got a fishing pole in your hand, you can't
have a phone in your hand.
Phone in your hand, or when you're sitting in the middle of the woods, whether you like to hunt or not, hiking, whatever it is, go out and do it to where that you have activity with your kids that doesn't require the technology
and I think,
access.
I'm an elementary school teacher, and I see kids, I was teaching third grade. A lot of my third graders had Snapchat. They had Instagram. They have TikTok. If you're going to do that, limit it, and they need to make sure that they're setting the accounts up as private.
Yep.
Make sure you know what you're doing before you just let them run wild on it, because kids, they'll take it to the farthest limit that they can because they don't know any better. And I think also communicating with other parents that you're going to stand your ground, get your group of friends that are also parents and stand that ground that like, hey, we're going to team up and we're not giving our kids phones until they're ready for them.
Right. I agree completely. Yeah, the parents have to walk arm in arm on this stuff, and but the schools also have a role to play. So, what would you say? Like, should schools be talking about sextortion with their students?
I think I haven't exactly talked to our counselors yet, but I know they are talking. They're leading into it and building curriculum. And I think I even heard that they're taking some of the DARE program out and putting in social media information. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I 100% think that is something that should be taught.
Yeah, I mean, because the reality is, not every parent is waiting, and so then not every parent is having these conversations that are absolutely imperative to have, and so then it becomes, okay, well, why aren't schools doing something about this, right? We know that kids are spending 4.8 hours a day on social media. In what world would we not be educating them on
teach
this
them
stuff?
about their digital footprint,
Right.
So
Yep.
I mean, this is all part of your digital
Sure.
footprint. So just aside from that being a good digital citizen, you should also know what is out there and how to prevent yourself from falling, victim to bad actors on the internet. I mean, yeah, sextortion is a bad word. Some parents don't want to say that, but it's real.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot more than what any parent recognizes or realizes.
Totally.
It likely, we're at a fairly small school now, 250 high school kids, I think is what they said. And it's happening here, and I know it happened at our high school before Evan's situation. And so it's happening, and parents need to be
I think
aware.
there's things like from NCMEC, posters. We hang up posters about
Bullying.
drugs, like not to use drugs. Why not hang up posters about take it down?
Totally.
Like it's just things our kids need instead of being ashamed or scared about exposing to our kids. They're exposed to it. If your kid has a phone, they're exposed to it.
Exactly.
Put those things out there and be on the forefront is my thought.
And there's new technology to prevent it or to bring awareness to parents on what's going on the phones and limit some of those things too. I believe Bark is something like that. There's technology out there that I didn't really know about until we started doing more research with the sextortion piece, and I believe that's going to be something that continues to grow as far as a technology field of helping to prevent things like this for kids, younger kids, and so parents have more knowledge. I'd also say be vocal with your state
Leaders.
representatives and at the national level to tell people that you want things done to protect kids.
Yeah, and I don't think, there's no one perfect solution, right? It's everybody coming to the table and working together. It's the kids themselves being educated, it's parents being informed, it's schools having the policies and procedure, the curriculum, it's elected officials, it's advocates, people like me. It's like there's no one solution, but if everybody comes to the table and plays their role, then I think we'd be in a lot better spot. But when you're in a situation where, well, schools don't want to talk about sextortion, therefore most parents don't know what sextortion is. If you post online about sextortion, very few people are going to see it because of the way these apps are set up. And then you have politicians who are essentially bribed, paid off by the tech companies. I mean, that's the reality. Steve Scalise and Mike Johnson, who aren't, this is all public record, right? And so it's like that's a very dangerous situation for children who are spending damn near 5 hours a day on these apps that are extremely, extremely dangerous, right? And so that's the frustrating part to me. It's like, okay, well, what do we do? I worked in politics and people in government. People are like, well, you should go advocate and testify on behalf of this stuff. And I was like, I don't know that I can make a difference to politicians who are, have been paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of them by these companies, but I know that I can go into a school and make a difference every single day. I know that I can, or I'm at least pretty confident, I can run across the country and like somebody will see that and like, okay, this guy's making a difference. And, I just so wish that, Evan could have seen, hey, I could get beyond my mistake. This is a very temporary thing. And, a lot of the goal of the run, it's like, of course, legislation and empowerment of parents and school policies. But if there's one Evan Boettler who sees, hey, this guy was able to get beyond his mistake. He's, so younger than my parents, but, I have the benefit of perspective and reflection that unfortunately he didn't. And, your story, your family story hits very close to home with me personally of, growing up in a small town here in the Midwest. And, Evan and I shared a birthday. His birthday was October 17th, as is mine. And just a, good kid. I grew up camping and fishing and, playing small town sports. And so, this one, more than some of the others, I just feel such a, kind of a closeness to it. And, I think that speaks a lot to your family and your community who's following along. And so I just want to, anybody in Aurora who's watching this, thank you so much.
We couldn't ask for more support. Our community is getting.
I don't know how we even made it through a scenario like this without the community,
friends.
the schools, been there for us. So family and friends and community is huge.
Yeah, no doubt. Was there anything else you want to share before we wrap this up?
I want to say thank you to you for picking up Evan's story because, we were just coming back from up in Ohio. We had gone to visit another family and we're doing some sightseeing up there. And you were able to make contact with us after seeing his story. And I think it's fantastic that what you're doing to bring awareness falls right in line with, us doing the protect and advocate and educate with Evan's voice. So I appreciate you, Ton, and your crew for taking the time out of your schedules and your lives to really
raise awareness.
Well, that's why we're doing it. It's like, everybody told me, well, you shouldn't run across the country because there's all these different dangers and you're going to spend a lot of your own money, which is true, to get this out. And it's like, I don't care. You know what I mean? I have heard too many of these stories to not do something. And it's clear that you feel the same way where, it's like, we have this story, we have this message, we have this experience. And in so many ways, I feel like a moral obligation to do something about it. And it's clear that you do as well.
Just the daily exposure, like you going and traveling and speaking. I mean, it's that ripple effect. You're speaking at one school, but 240 kids just today. Yeah. Like the more people know and the more people feel connected to that, then the more people are going to speak up about this. And it's not just a silent thing that's being swept under the table.
Yeah, well, courage is contagious and you two have it. And so, hopefully that, other families will share their story. And obviously this message is getting out and will continue to. So I'm just so grateful that you guys would take the time. And for everyone, we'll put it in the notes, Evan's voice with the website and social media. So we can hopefully get some more people following along and engage with this stuff as well. So
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you all for listening. Thanks again to Bark Technologies for sponsoring this podcast. We'll see you all on the next episode.